Penn State has another problem where they can least afford it. Wide receiver. I'll tell you why. Plus, did you catch Caitlyn Clark on Saturday Night Live ahead of tonight's WNBA draft? We've got it all right here. Locked On Big Ten starts now.
You are Locked On Big Ten, your daily podcast on the Big Ten Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Big Ten. I'm Craig Sheeman. Coming up on 40 years as a radio sports talk show host and play-by-play announcer. And I want to thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And these days, every new potential hire could feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. Terms and conditions apply. A portal problem for Penn State. We'll get into that. Plus, Caitlyn Clark gets drafted tonight in the WNBA after her great appearance on Saturday Night Live over the weekend, plus our Big Ten Top 10 observations. If you are a Penn State football fan, and if you're a fan of Locked On Big Ten, you know that we have mutual respect for the Nittany Lions as one of the best programs in the country. But it is a program that has had Michigan and Ohio State standing in its way of true greatness. They are the ones they have to get past in order to make it to the top of the mountain year after year. And you and I also know that this solid football team, Penn State, had one glaring weakness last year, and it was a lack of a deep threat at wide receiver to stretch out the defenses against them. But their best returning wide receiver, or at least their number one option from last year, KeAndre Lambert-Smith, is reportedly leaving the team and entering the transfer portal this week. Apparently, he almost left right after the football season, but decided to come back for winter workouts. And he's been participating in spring practice. So this is kind of weird. Head coach James Franklin even said that he thought Lambert-Smith had a good spring. Everything was going fine, swimmingly. Franklin thought that he showed a lot of flashes and was doing it on a more consistent basis. And he went on to say that his top receiver and his new offensive coordinator, Andy Kotelnicki, were working well together. Everything was looking great, and they were developing a great relationship. And he said, you know, we need to have a great year out of Lambert-Smith this year. Yeah, that's what we've discussed here on Locked On Big Ten as well. It was something that needed to take a step forward, and he was going to be one of the guys that needed to do it. Now he's going to do it elsewhere. In 6 of the first 9 games last year, Lambert-Smith caught at least a half a dozen passes in each game, and then he disappeared. In fact, he caught just 2 balls in the last 4 games of the season last year. In the end, he caught 53 passes for 673 yards and 4 touchdowns. In 4 years, he caught 11 touchdown passes, 126 catches for over 1,700 yards. So what happened? Why is he leaving Penn State? Was he threatened by wide receiver Julian Fleming transferring in from Ohio State? Was that the problem in the wide receivers room? I don't know. By the way, everything I've been hearing regarding Fleming is he's been a great leader and taking control of that wide receiver room. And he's been getting the guys to use a ton of equipment that's around. They have everything they need at Penn State, which, you know, like the jugs machine, which that's a red flag for me, because why haven't they been using the jugs machine with a regular basis if you're a wide receiver? Obviously, Fleming did it at Ohio State. Marvin Harrison Jr. uses it all the time. He's like, hey, guys, we got this. Let's do this. Let's get involved. At least he's taking control of the wide receiver room, but I thought it was a little strange that he had to point these things out if that's true. So anyway, we'll talk about that some other time. I wouldn't think that Lambert-Smith would be threatened by Fleming. I don't know that was the reason. If anything, Fleming's presence on the field would only help Lambert-Smith get more touches in a game. Did he not like the new Andy Kotelnicki offensive system? Maybe, maybe not. Lambert-Smith seemed to want to leave Penn State before Kotelnicki arrived. Remember, it was at the end of the season. He was thinking about it, decided to stay. Then they get the new offensive coordinator right there. All this is going on at the same time. So, as Franklin observed, Lambert-Smith was doing well this spring under the new system and getting along with everybody. Did Lambert-Smith have a lack of confidence in Drew Aller's ability to get him the ball? Well, now maybe that's worthy of conversation. Maybe. As we mentioned, he disappeared in the last 4 games last year, and that was about the same time that Drew Aller started really looking afraid of making mistakes and throwing interceptions. And so he just wouldn't even take chances downfield, wouldn't even throw the ball downfield. Remember, had some weird just grounding, just throwing the ball nowhere near anybody in the Michigan game just because he didn't want to be threatened of turning the ball over. Anyway, it was a bizarre time of year last year. And maybe that was it. Receivers like quarterbacks that could get them the ball. We'll look at Drew Aller again from the spring game on Saturday, some ups and downs to discuss. This may be a worthy reason why he is leaving. Or maybe it was nil money, right? Name, image, and likeness. That's what everybody's all worried about these days. Maybe he could get a better deal elsewhere. It seemed like this time last year, James Franklin was talking about, hey, up until now, Penn State had really kind of been behind the 8 ball on nil money. A lot of coaches felt that way. A lot of schools felt that way. Everybody's still trying to figure this out. But by the time the summer got here, Franklin was making statements like, yeah, I think we're catching up. We're up to speed. So I don't know that was the problem. In the end, we may never know what's going on inside Lambert-Smith's head, but a lot of us, thought him pairing up with Fleming on the football field would make a decent pair of receivers. I don't know if they would be the best 1-2 combination in the Big Ten or college football by any stretch of the imagination, but it would be solid, be very solid. So I don't know. Now it just seems like they're replacing Lambert-Smith with Fleming, just one for the other. They won't be working together. It's 1 step forward and 2 steps back at the most glaring need for this Penn State football program. Love to hear from Penn State football fans on this one and get your opinion on it. You know how to hit me up at Twitter, at X, at Talk Big Ten, comments on YouTube as well. Don't forget our website, talkbig1010.com. Love to hear from you on this your opinions on this situation, why you think he's going, how the team looked this weekend in the spring game. We have some thoughts on how the spring game went here this weekend. And let's start with Drew Aller at quarterback. He threw for 202 yards in the scrimmage game, if you will. The 202 yards, that's more than he had in half of his games for Penn State last year in the regular season. Okay, so that's good. Check the good box. The bad, completed less than half of his 32 passes. Yikes, in a spring game, no less. Little concern, 15 of 32? That's not great. And that's also in a situation where he got the special jersey on. He knows he's not even going to get hit. And still not completing half. That's a red flag. That is a red flag for me. But back to the positive. There were half a dozen passing plays for more than 15 yards, including a late 30-yard touchdown pass. So that's a check of the good box. All right. He overthrew a couple passes, though. Bad. The offense had a couple pre-snap penalties. That needs to get cleaned up, especially with this new motion offense that they have. A lot of pre-snap motion. They got to get this buttoned down and taken care of over there at Penn State. So regarding our conversation about the receivers, Aller hit 8 different receivers on Saturday during the spring outing. Maybe Trey Wallace can be the breakout guy. He had 72 yards receiving. He's a guy that had 19 catches last year. Not a lot, but it's some. He's involved. It's a guy that with a little bit of experience, and next man up, next year up, right? Maybe a guy like that steps up on the offense. So we'll see what happens in 2024. Again, we'd love to hear from you Nittany Lion fans out there. We are. Let's go. Hit me up on the text at Talk Big Ten and on YouTube for all of your comments. And by the way, if you're joining us and you haven't yet, I'm going to ask you, would you mind subscribing to Locked On Big Ten? Just click it. It's free. No other information required. And it'll help you follow Locked On Big Ten for free wherever you get your podcast. That way you'll get the latest episode of this podcast as soon as it becomes available each and every day. Caitlyn Clark of Iowa. She was on Saturday Night Live over the weekend. Did you catch it? It was cute. I liked it. We'll talk about it. And, of course, she gets drafted tonight by the WNBA. Plus, more spring football news. Did you see Chip Kelly's salary at Ohio State? I did. I'll share it with you. All that coming up next right here on Locked On Big Ten. All right, I want to tell you about LinkedIn Jobs. This is a big, big deal. If you are a small business, small office, whatever the case may be, and you need to hire people as soon as possible, right? Somebody leaves, you got to replace them. You got to keep the business going. LinkedIn Jobs is where you need to be. They have the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. It's not just a job board. LinkedIn Jobs helps you hire professionals that you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but they might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs, 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. You should be one of them as well. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockdowncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockdowncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Thank you for making Locked On Big Ten your first listen every day, especially everydayers out there. Thank you very much. Meanwhile, be sure to subscribe on YouTube, share, and follow, and like Locked On Big Ten, your team every day. And don't forget to check out our website, talkbig10.com. In the Ohio State spring game, we had 3 Big Ten teams that had spring games this past weekend: Penn State, Ohio State, and Purdue. In the Ohio State spring game, all 5 quarterbacks that are scholarship played. There were a lot of interceptions, 4 of them, as a matter of fact. Good job by the defense. Almost a 5th interception. This is our first look at Chip Kelly and his offense as offensive coordinator for the Buckeyes since he quit the head coaching job at UCLA to run the Buckeyes offense. Do you know what he makes? Do you know what his salary is? The Buckeyes just released their staff salaries for the 2024 season. Kelly's going to start at a cool $2 million a year just to run the offense. And he's going to get a slight bump each year in 2025 and 2026. He was making $6 million a year as the head coach at UCLA, but you all know the story now, how he came to be with the Buckeyes, and he will be well compensated for it. Meanwhile, let's take a look at the Wisconsin football camp and their quarterback situation. Nick Evers is hitting the transfer portal. Really no surprise if you think about it. Last year, he was a redshirt freshman, but Luke Fickell brought in 6-year senior transfer Tanner Mordecai. This year, the team brought in Miami transfer Tyler Van Dyke, who probably will get the starting job. By the way, he's in a tight battle with Braden Locke for the QB1 job. I understand the thinking of Luke Fickell and Phil Longo is, hey, we can't bring in a transfer portal quarterback every year and can't have him not play. That's a bad sign. We won't get any other transfer people to transfer into the future. So I think that Tyler Van Dyke is going to be given every chance to get this job, although Braden Locke has given him a run for his money. Now, back to Evers for a minute. He's got a strong arm, but he never really grasped offensive coordinator Phil Longo's system at Wisconsin, and his departure leaves true freshman Mabry Mature as the 3rd stringer. So the team may pick up another quarterback in the transfer portal, which opens up this week. So stay tuned for that situation there in Madison. Speaking of former Wisconsin quarterbacks, Deacon Hill is now at Iowa, of course. And he's getting most of the first team snaps in the spring because you remember Cade McNamara is still recovering from a knee injury last year. And they say he will be ready to go this summer. But in the meantime, Deacon Hill's getting all the snaps. He started 9 games last year. Hill did. But McNamara will be the presumptive starter, of course, once he gets healthy enough. Speaking of health and injuries, the UCLA Bruins suffered a serious injury over the weekend on their spring football 11-on-11 drills. Tight end Hudson Habermill suffered a knee injury. We should learn more about the extent of that injury sometime today, maybe by tomorrow. And this was fun. I don't know if you saw this over the weekend, but it was really, really good. Iowa basketball player Caitlyn Clark. She continues to make headlines. First of all, she made an amusing cameo appearance on Saturday Night Live this weekend. She made fun of Michael Che on Weekend Update. That was pretty good. And because he had been making fun of women's sports back in the day, she pretty much rubbed it back in his face. So it was pretty funny. And then she returned to the stage for a curtain call after, like they do at the end of Saturday Night Live, where everybody goes on the stage to wave goodbye. The star host for that night was Ryan Gosling, and she was there with him and the rest of the SNL staff. And she brought a couple of her Iowa teammates with her, which I thought was pretty cool as well. That was all. It's all over the internet if you want to check that out. There will be more Caitlyn Clark news tonight. She is expected to be the first pick of the WNBA draft, which begins at 7:30 tonight Eastern time at New York's Brooklyn Academy of Music. The Indiana Fever own the first pick and are expected to take her first, and the draft will air on ESPN. Every day I read a new article about a WNBA team that is selling out games in which they have the Indiana Fever on the schedule. Again, she hasn't been drafted yet. Presumably will be by them tonight, by the Indiana Fever. But weeks in advance of the draft, if the Indiana Fever on the road or on somebody's schedule at home around the WNBA, those games are selling out. Never heard a story like that with the WNBA. Everybody wants to talk about the WNBA and their pay scales really, really low. We've talked about it here compared to the men, of course. Like an average rookie salary is like $75,000 or $80,000 a year. The league average is between $120,000 and $140,000. There are a couple of women. I mean, you can count on one hand. They're making like $240,000, $220,000, something like that. That's it. That's the ceiling. Everybody says, well, equity, we got to get it. We got to get that more like the men. Well, the long story was the WNBA was just subsidized by the NBA. People didn't go to the games. People didn't watch. I think it's all about to change. I really do. You go back, if you're old enough, you'll remember when Larry Bird and Magic Johnson came to the NBA. They had their rivalry with the national championship with Michigan State versus Indiana State. That brought the NCAA tournament to life. All of a sudden, people were interested in that. And then when Magic and Bird go to the NBA was dead. I mean, the NBA Finals was like on tape delay back in the late 70s. Nobody cared. Those two got in, had the East Coast thing, East-West Coast, Lakers and Celtics, and they really took the NBA to the next level. And, of course, salaries go with that, ratings go with that, and I really believe that Caitlyn Clark will do that for the WNBA, and Angel Reese and all these other girls that are going in that everybody has really enjoyed watching in college basketball. And again, for the first time in my life, the women's national championship crushed the men's championship in ratings by like more than 4 million people. It's there. This is tangible. This is a real thing. And I really think that she will go ahead and lift up the WNBA. Now, it might not happen overnight, but I think the WNBA, I think they're already looking to double their rights fees moving forward. So that's something there that will trickle down to the players and they'll get higher salaries. So I really do think she'll help change the WNBA, much like she changed our viewing habits with women's basketball this year. So kudos to her on all of that. The WNBA draft tonight, 7:30 Eastern time. You can find it on ESPN. Also, it's Locked On's NFL Mock Draft Live on April 17th this week, 7 o'clock Eastern time, streaming on the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Find the ultimate 6-episode series on April 17th at 7 o'clock Eastern to hear who the local Locked On experts are picking for every NFL franchise, with live reactions from local college football experts and even the fantasy football angle. So the Locked On NFL Mock Draft on April 17th, 7 p.m. Eastern time, streaming live on Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel and on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app that we like to tell you about all the time. All right, coming up on a Monday here, we always like to look back at the weekend, our Big Ten top 10 observations, a lot of spring football here. So we will have all of that for you coming up in 1 minute right here. Don't go anywhere on Locked On Big Ten. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball is in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every single game. Right now, new customers, you can get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. You can bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and very easy to read and use and work through. All right, so what are you waiting for? Join the friend. Join your friends. They're all doing it. FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. In fact, looking ahead to tomorrow night, Tuesday night, the play-in games for the NBA are here. Lakers and Pelicans. I like the Lakers in that one. I like the Warriors over the Kings. And then tonight, Monday, I like the Lightning over the Sabres. The Tampa Bay Lightning are red hot right now. Also, I like the Red Wings over Montreal. So catch that tonight. You can do it all on FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. All right. I want to put up on the screen one at a time our Big Ten top 10 observations from the weekend. We always like to do that. Going to be a lot of spring football. Saw a lot of cool things over the weekend. So here, I'll put it on screen. If you're on audio only, I'll describe it as best I can. So it is up here. And right here, number 10, I'm going to put Purdue. This is Purdue football now. Will Helt had an interception in the spring game. Always like to give a little shout out to the defense on what they're doing here with these spring games. A lot of the attention automatically goes to the offense. Like to pay some attention to the defense from time to time. All right. And number 9, also Purdue, Hudson Card, as I now just go back and now talk about the offense. Had a 58-yard touchdown pass to Andrew Sawinski for the Boilermakers as they try to get that offense going this year. And also at number 8, going to put the Penn State defense in their spring game. They had 2 interceptions in that game. So again, I like pointing out interceptions and big defensive plays. But then I'll go back here at number 7 and give a shout out to the Penn State offense. 6 passing plays with 15 or more yards, including a 30-yard touchdown by Drew Allen. That is what they need to work on. That is what is lacking from last year. And it was good to see some of that here in the spring game. And at number 6, just the spring game in general for Penn State, because I'm always impressed. 67,000 fans showing up in April. I think that's cool. That just shows you the passion and how excited everybody is for the football season. We're always counting down to football season. That's why we love talking about these spring games as well. I know, Buckeye fan, you had a bigger number. I'll get to you in a minute. Here at number 5, I want to give a shout out to Ohio State linebacker CJ Hicks. He had a game-high 8 tackles, working hard out there for the Buckeyes defense in their spring game in Columbus. At number 4, a shout out to their defense as well. In addition to all those tackles that CJ Hicks was making, Ohio State's defense had 4 interceptions on various quarterbacks that were throwing it out there. Again, almost had a 5th. That was an impressive day by the defense. And just like I gave a shout out to the Penn State spring game, I'll give one to the Ohio State one. 80,012 people showed up on a breezy, chilly, but sunny 60-degree day, sat out there at the Horseshoe and just loved watching spring football. 80,000 people for a spring game. I'll just paint a picture, not to I don't want to besmirch anybody. I just paint a picture. Look, Ohio State had 80,000 people. Penn State had 67,000 people. Purdue had 4,000 people. I just pointed out, right? I don't know what the weather report was in West Lafayette that day, but that was the situation. All right, what else do we have? They're basketball school. What else we got here? Number 2, Penn State's Drew Aller, 202 passing yards for the White in their 27-0 win versus the Blue. And then I will close it out at number 1, our Big Ten top 10 observations by me over the weekend. Number 1, Caitlyn Clark on Saturday Night Live, giving it to Michael Che on the weekend update. I thought it was great. We wish her nothing but the best for her professional career in the WNBA as that gets started tonight when she will be drafted, presumably number 1 by the Indiana Fever, again at 7:30 Eastern time. So that is a look at our top 10 observations from the weekend. Maybe you had a different one that we missed or you want to give a shout out to. Hit us up on Twitter or X at Talk Big Ten number 10. Also the comments on YouTube. And don't forget our website, talkbig10number10.com. Be sure to subscribe and follow this podcast right now on your favorite podcast app, and you'll get the latest episode of Locked On Big Ten as soon as it becomes available each and every day. And I always ask you guys to go ahead and tell your friends about us too. If you know some Big Ten alum that would really like this, word of mouth, help us out. That would be much appreciated. Inviting you to watch another episode of Locked On Big Ten after this one, either where you're currently watching it or go to our website, talkbig10.com. All of our websites, all of our podcasts are archived there on the website as well. And don't forget to check out our friends on Locked On Sports Today with you 24/7. We still got an eye on what's going on. The transfer portal is open for football and basketball. Always got an eye on all of that. Spring football still going on for a lot of schools. So we got a lot to talk about in tomorrow's episode. Until then, thanks for joining us here today. Enjoyed it as always. I'll talk to you tomorrow. I'm Craig Sheeman for Locked On Big Ten.